There we are. Hello there, and welcome to the Drax Files Radio Hour. My name is Draxter Dupre. I'm your host, and today I have a very special guest. Well, I say this every time because I'm so thrilled to be able to get people in here into the virtual realm, into my basement studio in VR, to talk my passion, which is literature, broadly speaking, and sci-fi or speculative fiction in particular. You don't see the guest folks on the stream yet, but you saw his hand, you saw his gloved hand, and the guest, his name is, and we will ask him to correct us, Chen Cho Fun or Stanley Chen for us in the West. Is that correct, Stanley?
Yes, perfect.
Now, how do you pronounce it in Chinese, your Chinese name?
It's Chen Qiu Fan, so you're very close.
Fan.
Yeah,
Fan. See, I
yeah,
watched one interview with you on YouTube like a million times, and I practiced
yeah.
it.
Perfect. You just sound like a Chinese.
So you are a author of short stories. You're a translator. You're holding exactly. Please hold it into the camera. This is your debut novel, Waist Tide. It's absolutely fascinating. And before we get into what this is all about, I want to know, how do you feel about your avatar? Does it feel good? Does it feel strange?
I feel fantastic because I love the growth and this jacket. It looks so cyberpunk and it's so psychedelic. I just couldn't help just look at my hands. So yeah, it's like kind of like, oh, so dizzy. Yeah.
Can you hold
It's
the glove
awesome.
into the camera? The
Yeah.
camera is
Oh
there. Here you
yeah.
go. And you know what's it's interesting? It just occurred to me that in the book there is one element of the book is, and I'm getting ahead of myself, is sort of a little bit the merging of man and machine, because the
Yes.
protagonists in the book, they outfit themselves. It's part of a culture. They put some sort of a polymer film that
Yes.
interacts with their body, right?
Yes.
And then it glows. Or can you explain that real quick, just to get? It's almost like a teaser of the book. So what are people doing in there? They're applying some sort of plastic onto their body, like a temporary
Yes.
tattoo.
Actually, I think this kind of like films can be used like functionally as a new media, just like the cell phone we're using right now, and it's also can be an interactive like interface. So on the body, so it can also detect your bioelectronic signals. So it can real time synchronizing to the cloud. So the machine knows how your body was reacting, how your emotion responds to the surroundings. So, but in the location where my story was setting is like the network, the application actually was limited. So people using this kind of film, actually the waste people, so they're from lower class. They're using this kind of technology as a tattoo, as a identify themselves. So you can see a lot of like description as they're using this film to show their emotion change and also show their like a family gangster tattoo and how they belong.
Right.
So I think it's like a subculture in the
Right,
future.
right. They
Yeah.
can be gang colors. They can be, like you said,
Yes.
they can depict the emotion that is happening
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
So let me hold up the book into the camera here. So the book is Waist Tide, and oops, there you go. There you go. The grab points are not perfect. Here we go. There you go. You're holding it up correctly. Waist Tide is the book, just came out in English, in German, and in Spanish, I believe. Now, this book
Yes.
to me reads like a documentary coupled with a thriller. It is heart wrenching to get to know the story of these so-called waste people. Now, this is about electronic waste, and listen up, folks, because this stuff is real. It is speculative fiction or near future, but this is about electronic waste that is shipped in massive quantities to an island in China where people, very poor people, extract the components of these obsolete electronics, the components that are worth something, from the other components. Meaning, they would melt down the plastic, right? They would melt it down. They have no protection whatsoever. All this stuff goes into the environment, but it's also harming the workers themselves. They live in shacks. They're completely disposable. When there's an illness, you can imagine that there's a lot of people who are right there standing in line to fill their place to be replaced in that machine. One scene, Stanley, is sticking
Yes.
with me to this day is in the beginning where you have this boy running after a prosthesis
Hmm.
that is shipped over, because we're talking about electronic waste, but we're also talking about medical waste, which is partially electronic. So in your future that you depict, people have prosthesis, and it's also a fashion statement. People just put an arm on or an eye, or they,
Yeah.
temporary sort of a fashion statement.
Yeah.
And on this island with this electronic waste, there's this arm, and it still has a battery in it, and the arm crawls on the ground, and the boy
Yes.
is chasing the arm, and then there's a horrific accident. But so before I continue to ramble with this book, which is absolutely fantastic, I want to ask you about your own history here. If you could briefly summarize,
Yes.
how did you arrive at this story? And it's interesting because I was aware about electronic waste being shipped to Africa. I had no idea that China is in that game as well. But you
Yeah.
grew up really close to that actual island that you're
Yeah.
depicting.
Yeah, actually, I was born in a small city called Shantou. It's in Guangdong province, southern part of China. So back in 2011, I went back to hometown. I used to work for Google back then. So I live in Beijing mostly. It's like 3,000 kilometers from my hometown. So I went back home like twice or three times a year. So and 2011, I went back and meet some my childhood friends. We had a dinners on the table. One of my childhood friend, he used to work for an American recycling company based in Guangdong. So he told me there's a small town named Guiyu. It's very close to our hometown. It's 60 kilometers away, like within 1 hour's drive. And it was so-called the center of the world's electronic waste recycling. So all this kind of shit was shipped from abroad illegally. So
Aha.
it's like yeah, so it's real. So since 1990s, people are doing this kind of work to make money. So that's how
Wow.
the economy runs in local. So people make money and make a living out of it.
And,
So
and
that
you lived,
triggered me.
you grew up fairly close to that. I mean, 60 kilometers still a distance,
Yeah.
but you were basically, you didn't even know this, right? So this
No.
is also fascinating to me in the book,
Yes.
because a lot of people make a lot of money. I mean, these are
Yes.
Chinese. They're exploiting their own people. I mean, the book is very complex in terms of international relations,
Yes.
and what I
Yes.
really
Yes.
love about it, you don't, you're not taking the simpler route of saying, hey, the
Yes.
Americans come in, they're the saviors with green recycling. There's no such thing. And you're very
Yes.
sort of critical and parse this out. The guy who's coming in from the Americans in the book, who proposes a much better, environmentally more sound recycling
Yes.
strategy, he is not going to change the power structure between
Yes.
people making money and the waste people who are, like I said in the onset, are completely replaceable. So you grew up there, but you were able to not even see it, right? I mean, that's so
Yes.
fascinating. So we live in these worlds, but there's a parallel world right next to us, and we don't notice it.
Exactly. And that's how we treat with the waste. You know, it's like invisible to us. Like it will disappear if you dump them into the tank. It will
Hmm.
disappear overnight, but actually it's not. Somebody has to take care of them. Somebody suffer for them. So I think that's what happened in our real world. So everyone think it's like effortless we can get rid of this waste, but actually not in my backyard, but in somebody else's backyard, not in the US, but it was shipped to the other developing country like China, Africa, Southeast Asia, all those different areas. So it's kind of not only about the waste, it's about imbalance of like geopolitics and economy. Yeah.
And you say actually, I think this is a kind of a direct quote of one of the protagonists, or maybe it's in his interior monologue where he says globalization is not new.
Yes.
Uh, oh, wait a minute, right? That's one of the characters who is educated in the U.S., who is
In the
Chinese,
BU.
but that's right.
Yeah.
Kai Zong is his name,
Kaizong.
right?
Yeah.
Kai
Yeah.
Zong, and he. Oh, look at Stanley. He's so good. He's such a good marketer. He's putting it right into the camera, the book. Perfect.
Wow. We did
That's
it.
how it, yes, that's how it's done. What I always do with the books here in Sansar is I always pick them up and then I just throw them. Okay. I read this one. I read the German
Oops.
translation.
Yeah.
And here's Xi Jing Liu. Don't put that in. Shh, don't,
Yeah.
no advertisement for the big guy. Um,
Yeah, it's big.
so the one of the main characters, a translator, who comes with an American executive, or you call him economic hitman. Hitman,
Yes.
we can define what you mean by that. But Kaizong is a translator who comes back to the place where he grew up,
Mm-hmm.
and he was also not aware of the waste people, of people who come from very poor villages, who are often
Yes.
lured away, who
Yes.
are being told, almost like a trafficker tells them, hey, you
Yeah.
come and you work for a couple of years, and yeah, it's not going to be very nice, but you're going to make money, you can send money home. And then they end up basically being exploited on these heaps of trash. And a lot of them don't make it out because of illness and, like I said, disposability.
Mm-hmm.
But Kaizong, that character, comes back from America. He goes
Yep.
to university, and then he sees that with different eyes. Now, I'm assuming that's a little bit of you in there, I guess. Or is that your
Yeah.
stand-in, that guy?
I hope so. Yeah. But I didn't study in the States, but I work for a American
For an American
company.
company. Hmm.
Yeah, Google, right? When I
Yeah.
sitting in the beautiful clean office, like you're feeling like you're disconnected to the people.
Right.
So I think yeah, everyone like have this kind of responsibility, like to shout out to the world, like say, hey, there's still people somewhere there. They're taking care of the electronic waste, even though it's the complicated like circle, right? It's like globalization and people have to make some money out of it, but still we can do it better, right? From legislation and protection to the people. And so happily, like we see a lot of things change after that. Yeah.
What was that like for you when you worked for Google? Because in connection with the character in your book.
Mm-hmm.
The character in the book says that he yearns for home, or for his childhood. I'm sorry. He
Mm-hmm.
feels like, oh, it's good to be home, but what he wants is his childhood. Now, this is something that really resonated with me. I went to the U.S. As a
Yeah.
young man. I'm currently in Germany. We're probably going back to the U.S. when my son finishes school. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm also caught between these two worlds, and I realized that people who leave, they they have a bigger issue with nostalgia than people that stick around. People who
Yes.
stick around, they also have this nostalgia. Oh, I was so cool when I was young, blah blah blah. But
Mm-hmm.
when you're going away, so Kaizong has this issue. He's yearning for his childhood, but
Yes.
what is he yearning for? You think what's his growth there? Because he was isolated in a kind of an upper
Yes.
class situation, and
Yes.
then he falls in love with a waste girl.
Mm-hmm. I think there's some kind of like also Stockholm syndrome there
Ah, that's a good,
for
yeah.
yeah. So I yeah, as you mentioned, like the kids always be blocked from something the parents thought was like unnecessary, like those unclean, dirty, maybe like corrupted things. So they will block them from the real world, using their love as a wall, like as a glass house. But after they grow up, they start to realize, like, my childhood actually is not as perfect. I remembered, right? So he start to explore his real hometown, his real family, his real people, and he feels like he has some responsibility to change, but actually he couldn't. So that's the dilemma behind all these things. He has like this kind of identity issue, right? So he tried to he tried to rescue a waste girl, intent to prove that he can change something, but actually maybe he just couldn't. So I think there's very complicated, complex and dynamic there between these
Because the dynamic is
characters.
also a little bit of a guilt issue. I mean, there's
Yes, I
undoubtedly
think.
some guilt. Kaizong comes back from America. He grew up
Yes,
in that world, but he never saw the waste issue, and now he realizes it as a grown man. And he undoubtedly there's a bunch of guilt there as well.
exactly.
It's fascinating that in the book the waste business is controlled by clans,
Yes.
by three clans, and so that's somewhat informal. I mean, informal in quotation marks. There is a fair amount of corruption with local governments going on, and the threat for the clans, who are doing really well with making good money,
Yes.
with extracting the components of the electronic stuff, the good components, and separating them and reselling them. They are threatened by the American who's coming in, who is representing a huge recycling company that says we can do it more efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
We can actually probably generate even more money. Of course, we're going to take our cut, but we also will clean the place up. So that's on the
Mm-hmm.
house, right? They're
Yes.
coming in and go like, you know what? Uh, we're the big guys. We do it clean, and I mean it's pretty clear. Your writing style is wonderfully. There is no such thing as objectivity in my mind in this
Yes.
issue, but
Yes.
through all the you set up these characters so well to present all these different points of views. But I would venture to guess, what would you say if I would ask you, what's the problem with the Americans coming in, Stanley? I mean, they have good technology. Come on, you want to be modern, you guys, you Chinese
Yes.
guys, no?
Yes. I mean, you have to have a historical perspective on this because, firstly, all this shit was done from America by the America. So it's what you cause, like you try not to pollute your own land. You try to not to damage your own water, soil, and air, and you dump all these things without any like like technical I don't know a solution like handle all these things and just dump it
Right.
into this
So
kind of
there's a
developing
historical
countries.
there is a historical responsibility almost.
Yes,
You could argue that some reparations are in order because
yes,
I mean that would be my personal opinion as well. I mean that's
uh-huh.
controversial even within America with African Americans, but I agree. So the historical context matters here.
Yes. And what's behind their like so-called upgraded solution? Actually, there's some interest behind this. Like I mentioned in the book, like rare earth is like a strategy in the future. So actually, it's now. So in between these conflicts between China and U.S., rare earth has been brought to the table. Like say because like almost over 70% of rare earth was produced in China. So it's kind of like
Hold on one second.
correct.
You gotta explain this concept a little bit more. Rare earth. What do you mean?
Rare earth is a specific sort of like metals.
Hmm.
There's a kind of like elements you can use for astronauts and you use for like military, you use for very cutting edge scientific research. You need all these kind of rare earth elements, but it's really limited. It's like only in some certain area on the earth you can like dig out all this kind of rare earth. So China right now have this kind of resources.
So they have the resources, and they have to be taken out of the ground. They have them naturally in their mountains, in their ground, and
Yes,
that's. Hmm.
yes, yes.
Hmm.
So I think it's very strategically important for the states as well. So this plot as some kind of conspiracy theory into the book. So they come here not only to do the good deeds, actually they try to get this rare earth and bring back to the states. So that's
Ah,
so called
are you saying there are colonial powers still,
yeah,
Stanley?
yeah, yeah,
Ah,
yeah. It's
now
just
I
like that.
understand the
Yeah.
book. You're telling me this now. I thought it was a James Bond thriller. No, but precisely, and you put that in there so brilliantly, that the power structure again. I mean, the thesis, if we wanted to summarize the book in one sentence, is really that um, change is not possible if the power structure remains the same. The power
Yes.
dynamic between the players.
Yes. Exactly.
So now nobody has to buy the book. They know what the thesis is. What's the sorry, I keep turning around, but the camera works well. Um,
Yeah.
the now what is the purpose? I asked this every author, and we're going to go back and forth here in the usual fashion. Stanley is in love with his gloves. Let's put the gloves
Yeah.
into the camera one more time here. Look at them. They're glowing because you feel good. That's why they're glowing in nice colors, right?
Yeah.
You feel at home
Exactly.
in VR.
Yeah.
You used to also work for Neutom, maker
Yes.
of actually maker of data gloves. Am I right?
Yes. Yes.
That is
Yes.
that is an unintended coincidence, I would say.
Yes, I think so.
Um,
Yeah.
Stanley, my question is, what's the purpose, the power, or if is there a power to fiction, to
Mhm.
speculative fiction, to near
Mhm.
future fiction? We had a
Mhm.
bunch of people in here, Kat Sparks,
Yeah.
climate fiction writer. A lot of people have
Mhm.
different opinions on this. They have opinions on the power of, or the lack of power of, sort of persuasion, or bringing awareness to readers with this
Mhm.
topics. What do you feel? What's the role of fiction in it? Why didn't you do a
Yeah.
documentary?
Yeah. I've been asked this question a lot. Like, why don't you put it into nonfiction or anthropology report or something? So because you can see in real world things change rapidly. Like earlier last year, like January of 2018, Chinese government already banned 24 types of foreign waste was imported to China, including electronic waste. So we actually just like was in the at the ending of this book, like Guiyu Silicon Isle, they built up some upgraded recycling park to have
Hmm.
this kind of waste worker working in a better environment with better protection with like Medicare insurance, etc. So I think it's more important that we realize this kind of thing doesn't only happen in China, or like nowadays it would happen in Southeast Asia, in Philippines, in East Africa, in a lot of different places, and maybe in the future it happened again and again. So it has this kind of metaphorical power to transcend in the time and geographic meaning. So I think it's more important to bring the message from this kind of speculative fiction narrative So it's delivering this kind of message to everyone. Say, hey, this is about human nature, about the relationship between technology and human, between like different powers, different interest groups. So we have to rethink about like how we should deal with our life, what kind of lifestyle we should purchase, right? You're throwing away everything. You're purchasing the latest, the faster, the fancier equipment like devices like
And
iPhone, iPad. Yeah,
that is so hard. I mean, I have a 16-year-old son who is a
yeah,
smart guy and who is a
yep.
critical guy, and he has
I
a good
believe
sort of
so.
framework, but he's still, as everybody, operating in a framework of certain societal pressures
Mm-hmm,
where people would, I mean, we identify with our devices, no question about it. I remember when he was in third grade and one
mm-hmm,
of the girls from his school comes to me and says, "Hey, Drax, you still have an iPhone 4?"
mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
I'm well, 44-year-old man at the time. I was thinking
yeah.
like, I'm above this kind of stuff. And then I went home and go like, eh, it feels bad. She was making fun
Yeah,
of me, and
yeah,
I don't like it.
yeah.
I mean,
It's
it's
natural. Yeah, it's natural.
one of the things that I also really like about the book. I mean, there's a lot of action, and actually, as the camera was aiming at you behind you, if you turn around, there's an interview with you that I have on a loop.
Oh
Where you
yeah.
talk about Chinese science fiction movies, and there's a
Oh
clip of
yeah.
the Wandering Earth in there. I want to talk about that too a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
the the book is Waist Tide is like you can make a it's almost like a screenplay too. I think if somebody wanted to make a movie out of this,
Yeah,
it would
yeah.
be really easy to write a screenplay. The way you set it up, the
Yeah.
dramatic points and everything, but also the dialogue and the dialogue between the clan members who benefit, who make
Mm-hmm.
a lot of money through this waste recycling by exploiting their own people. The way they compartmentalize it is completely fascinating. There's also
Mm-hmm.
difference in these three clans. One is a little bit more mafia than the other guy. Like the one guy, the one clan head, his wife died of cancer. Then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
he sort of developed a little bit of empathy for the waste workers,
Yes.
right? And he's
Yeah.
justifying the exploitation that he's doing every day with sort of like, yeah, but I give him a little bit of health care. I
Yeah.
mean that isn't that very prevalent in capitalism that leaders
Yes.
of industry very
Yes.
often there's a way
Yes.
for them to sleep at night, I guess.
Yes. Yes. And also very interesting that very recently I have this kind of occasionally like a connection with some strangers. One is from like Greenpeace.
Hmm.
So they told me in the Beijing office like they are all reading my book. So
Oh
they kind of
wow.
find a lot of
Hmm.
interesting things within my book. So it's
Hmm.
very related to their job actually. And the second things I met one very big boss who doing recycling business with local government, and he read the book and he said what you wrote in the book
About
like
him.
the conversation between the Scott and local government is actually happened. It's just the same the dialogue when he talking to the local government. Yeah,
It's
so
amazing.
that's
Scott is the
yeah.
American who comes in with a big offer again of
Yes.
money and clean recycling and solving all the environmental problems, plus still keeping the money going. I mean, it's like a win-win-win, right? They call it
Yes.
win-win-win, like a
Yes. Like a
triangle, like a pyramid.
triangle. Yeah. Yeah.
There's no such thing as a win-win-win, I would suppose. I
Yeah.
mean,
I
at
don't
least
think
not for
so.
the waste workers.
Yeah. It's
But
Google.
that's amazing. So this guy is basically saying you wrote a dialogue that happened to him, that he was
Yeah.
actually conversing with American interests, investors, like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're right now like local companies, so local
Hmm.
capital. But the
Hmm.
same, the power dynamic is also the same. Yeah.
Is it then likely when China moves up on the ladder of industry, is it then pretty much a foregone conclusion that the can is literally kicked down the road to poorer countries,
Yes, I think so. Yeah,
outsourced to the next, and then they work themselves up, and it's sort of an endless cycle.
yeah. If you check the data this year, so like the waste dump in Thailand, Indonesia was uprising like crazy, like maybe 1,000%. So it's also there's direct conflicts. There's protesting like happened in Philippines about like Canada dump the waste in Philippines, right? So that's already there. So even right now, there's some Southeast Asia countries, some NGOs, we try to build up a league, which we will like work together to go against the foreign waste from the Western
Right.
countries. So I think that's really happening.
Right. So that's a good development that you do regional collaboration where you have a place at the table
Yes.
for a negotiation leg up on negotiations. I'm really curious. I had a little bit of email exchange with Ken Liu, who is your
Yes.
translator, and
Yes.
he is coming on the program early next year. And
Uh-huh.
he said that he sees himself as an American translator because I said to him, oh, he asked, what do you want to talk about? And I said, well, I want to talk about your work. I read your short stories. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
read your novel yet, but I will. But I also want to talk about your role as an ambassador of
Mm-hmm.
Chinese science fiction. Let's hold one of the Xi Jingliu books into the camera that he translated. Where is it?
Yeah. Oh,
Did you
not this
throw it on the
one.
ground?
Maybe this is our Germany
Oh yeah, this is
edition.
the German
Yes.
translation, right?
Three body problem. Yeah, here you go.
I don't think we have the three body problem in English here, but
Yes.
the
Yes.
Ken Liu said that he sees himself as a American author.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if you see yourself as a Chinese author, and if you do, what is special about Chinese science fiction?
Mm-hmm.
Let me add one more thing. I mean, I've said this so many times, my friends are rolling their eyes when I said, the three body problem is so magnificent. First of all, it will probably make every sci-fi author so depressed because they go
Yeah.
like, there's nothing I can write about. It's all
Yeah.
in there. It's so
Yeah.
massive in scope and ideas. I don't know what to write about.
Exactly.
But the other thing is also that it is
Mm-hmm.
distinctively Chinese in many ways. And I'm not an expert on the scene. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not an
Yeah.
expert even in, regional differences. But
Mm-hmm.
what I gleaned from reading it, I mean, the use of metaphors is so different. The use
Mm-hmm.
of, you embrace these metaphors in a way that is just you just don't see in American science fiction. But anyways, are you a Chinese author, and if so, why? And what distinguishes you or Chinese sci-fi from American sci-fi
Mm-hmm.
or European?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely am a Chinese science fiction author. I was born in China. My nationality is Chinese, and I use Chinese to write, and I write about Chinese people and with Chinese stories. So basically, I'm a Chinese. So, and I think because science fiction actually is a genre which was introduced to China, it's a Westerner genre concept, right? So basically, what we did is to learn, maybe stole a lot of things from Westerner, those classics, even Golden Age, Juverne's, Wells, all those big names. So we read a lot of like Westerners science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's like UK and US. So I dare not to say if there's any particular difference between Chinese science fiction and American science fiction, but I dare to say that we are start to like realize that we need to find our own voice. We need to find our own narratives, we our own like value, maybe our own philosophy, and maybe time space structure within our language, within our perception, within our cognitive. So I think I'll try my best to do something like Chineseness in my book and in my other short stories. For example, I bring in a lot of Buddhism elements. So in my short story, Coming of the Light, I try to connect Buddhism with internet technology together, and it come up with some very hilarious and thought-provoking ideas. So I think it's a good way to explore. And also right now, China is very technologically like advanced in a way. So actually, we're living in a so-called science fictional reality nowadays. So you don't have to bring cash. You even don't use credit card a lot. So all you need is bring your phone with you, and you can do everything. So that's pretty much in the future, right? And so I think
So
this is
that
the
it's like I'm sorry to interrupt. And if you
no.
could give me an example
Yep.
of involving or incorporating Buddhist ideas into
Uh-huh.
the story, that would
Yep.
fascinates me. But basically, what you're saying is also that China maybe more so than American science fiction or European science fiction is grappling with living so far in the future and not abandoning these very, very old traditions in culture and religion and trying to put that together. Maybe that's sort
Yes.
of
Yes, I think so. I think that's very important for us to build up our own tradition, like on science fiction.
so. What would be a Buddhist concept or a part of Buddhist philosophy that is in conflict, or maybe a good way to build drama in a narrative
Yeah,
that you have used?
I try to bring in this kind of Buddhism elements and world building in my couple short story, maybe in the future in the novel. So I think it's kind of like this kind of uh, cosmos uh, structure is very different. Like there's no object and subjectivity, so they're all connected together. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like in Chinese we have one saying like 天人合一. It means the cosmos and the individual was so connected. So there's a lot of like correspondence in between the two. So if your emotion change, maybe the universe will change as well. So there's so many very subtle this kind of like ideas within Buddhism. So just to build up something around it with the explanation of technology maybe and build up some story. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's very interesting to me.
It's a little bit in waist tight as well, in the sense, and I think there's also, I mean, the humor. I gotta say, the German translation is also very good. I mean, Ken
Okay.
Liu is a great translator. I mean, I can't
Yes.
evaluate because I have never read it in Chinese, right?
You
Everybody
should.
says Ken Liu is such a great translator. I don't
For
know.
sure.
Maybe he's making it all up. But the German translation is so great, and there is a lot of humor in it. There is.
Yeah.
I felt there is more humor than in the American translation, but it's also my native tongue. And one of the things is this the tension between religion
Mm-hmm.
or people who pretend to be religious or not,
Yes.
and then when it's when it's a conflict situation, they go like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I might as well pray, it doesn't hurt. I don't
Yeah.
believe in all this, but let's just
Yeah.
do it. And in one
Yes.
case, they're doing an old ritual with a
Yes.
shaman,
Yes.
which is ridiculous,
Uh-huh.
but they're still doing it. And these are people who are living, yeah, they're living in the future. They're living with
Yes.
cutting edge technology, augmented reality, everything. And
Yes.
then they go like, well, we got to go back to this shaman
Yes.
ritual with this woman running
Yes.
around,
Uh-huh.
and then the ghost will appear or the ghost will be
Uh-huh.
replaced. And
Yes.
it's fascinating.
Yeah, actually that's the culture I was living. So Yeah, so because I live in a very special area of China, it's like Guangdong province, and especially my people, like Chaozhou people. So you can take it as some kind of minority, even we Han, you know. But
Oh,
like we have very ancient traditions, like we still keep kind of like clans
what do you mean you
and
hunt?
right.
You hunt for your breakfast, like you get up in the morning and
No,
then before eating you hunt?
no. Han is my if like you're German, so you're like some kind of like your race, your
Oh, I
ethnic
see. Yes, yes,
ethnic.
yes. The
Yeah, so
ethnicity.
Han.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, I
yeah.
see.
So Han is our like identity, but actually we speak different dialect. We have
Hmm.
different culture. So everything is so mixed in my hometown. So what I wrote in the book actually is really happened. So all this kind of ritual thing, all this kind of cleanse thing, and also with this kind of most advanced technology. So because we are so-called economic special zone, so we can import it a lot of like electronic equipment, books, animations, movies from abroad. So we are more open than other area of in China back in maybe 20 or 30 years ago. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
so it's a
Ah, now
very
I understand. Okay,
yeah
because then that's also the one the ghost ritual where people give money
yes
to the deceased to kind of pay off their sins. I mean, I'm mixing everything together, but the cool thing
yeah
is you can do in your book, then you can also do this online. You can
yeah
just pay basically online to
yes
make the ghosts peaceful. I
yes.
mean, it's fantastic. Ah, I'm such a fan. Okay, we're coming up to the last
Thank
10
you.
minutes. If people have
Cool.
any questions, I'm looking over here to the screen. Please post your questions on the YouTube stream. Now we connected via, it was funny because we connected via, we wanted to connect via Skype and then it didn't work. And so now I'm also registered by the Chinese government because you basically forced me to download sign up with WeChat. Um, Now, this question is fascinating to, I'm sure every Western reader. I mean, how big does censorship apply for novelists? I mean,
hmm
is this a problem for you
I
writing this? I
mean,
mean, because I mean, there is some, there's obviously some criticism in terms of sort of global capitalism.
hmm
I can see that if there were a government censor who would read this, like in the former Eastern Germany, let's say, he would be able to read this and he would go, "This book is fine. It's the
yeah,
Americans who are the problem, right?"
yeah,
They could completely read it like that. They go like, "This is the greatest Chinese book ever."
yeah.
But is there such a thing? I mean, do you have to go through that process or?
Yeah, like I think all the books, even in the States, you have to go through like certain process. Like yeah, in China as well, we did. And as you mentioned, some people might think this book is kind of sensitive, but actually we just did a reprint this year, just coming out last month. So we did a new edition aligned with the English one. So we have the
Mhm,
new cover. So it sells very well right now, and I didn't get into any trouble. So I think
mhm,
for me and for science fiction right now, it seems to be okay. And
mhm,
also there's so many different types of political correctness in the world, right? In China there's certainly some, and in the States there's some other PCs, right? We are all like get used to that. So during the
mhm.
process of publication you have to be very adapted to all these kind of different principles. That's how we live on the world, like as a international society, because yeah, you're just not writing for yourself. You have to, yeah, you have to think about it. I used to think that I
Well, but
won't.
that sounds a
Yeah.
little bit like self-censorship. I just want to say,
Uh-huh.
because oftentimes repressive regimes, they don't have to overtly say,
Mm-hmm.
if you say this, then you'll end up in the gulag. After
Yeah.
a while, people know exactly what they can write about and what they don't. And
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
one more added thing, I mean, to my knowledge, in
Mm-hmm.
America, there's no such thing as sort of an official government
Mm-hmm.
run censor bureau.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's certainly government agencies and the
Yeah.
defense mechanism
Yeah.
and defense institutions finance
Mm-hmm.
a lot of Hollywood
Yeah.
movies. There's
Mm-hmm.
no, this is not a
Yeah.
secret. But I'm just wondering if there's actually a sort of an official sort of government
Mm-hmm.
entity that this would go through. But maybe you're not allowed to say this, or Sansa will be shut down. I don't know. Maybe there's Chinese investors in Sansa and they're coming to my basement. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but I mean, like mostly, like we think about the authorship because in the previous like Chinese edition, we have very brutal, straightforward, violent scenes. But
Right.
actually, my readers mostly in high school, so my
Hmm.
publisher will tell me maybe we should rethink about it.
Right.
Maybe their parents will not be happy. Maybe there'll be some problem for you and to the publisher. I think, yeah, that makes sense, right? So I did rewrite something around that. And also that happened in the States too, because we are all looking through the realities through the different lens. So we have
Hmm.
this kind of like filter things. So maybe there's no some kind of organization or institution doing the censorship, but it's all in our concept, in our conceptualizing, like I don't know, in our systems.
No,
So
no,
I
I
think,
understand. I mean,
yeah,
yes. No, I mean,
yeah, yeah,
I understand
yeah,
if you modify your
mm-hmm,
writing, if
yes,
it's targeted towards
yes,
certain groups or maybe young readers, you take certain
yes,
concessions. I mean, that I
yes,
completely am okay with. I would
yes,
find it problematic
mm-hmm,
to witness something like it happened. I mean, I
yes,
just know it from East Germany,
mm-hmm,
where a lot of
yeah,
writers, the only way was to basically
mm-hmm,
defect and go over,
yeah, yeah, I
if they
know that,
wanted to be free. You know, they had to get out of there in order
yeah, yeah, yeah,
to freely write about stuff.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
go ahead.
mean, yeah, yeah. I'm writing about the future and writing about the possibilities, writing about the alternatives. So I have direct conversation with the bureau, with the state government. So I ask them, what I'm writing is science fiction. So it it's okay for me to explore this kind of possibilities in the future, right?
Hmm.
It's nothing directly like relevant to what's happening right now in China. So I think they're kind of open to it. They think, yeah, it's fine. Like, yeah, for example, in the Wandering Earth, they destroy Beijing, they destroy Shanghai, they destroy major cities like Hangzhou. So it couldn't happen in the past. You never saw this kind of things happen in Chinese movie, but they happen
Hmm.
now. So I think
Hmm.
you can see things in different angles. So yeah,
Well,
for
science
science fiction,
fiction, that
yeah,
is science fiction's role or power, that
yes,
you can you can explore things, and you always have a way out if the censor comes and says, well, this is not really happening. This
yeah,
is just sort
yeah,
of a fantasy. It's not
yeah,
real. That's the power of fantastic
yeah,
speculative fiction.
yeah, yeah.
But
That's good.
since you
Yeah,
mentioned the Wandering
uh huh,
Earth, I mean,
uh huh.
so we're talking about a book by Xi Jing Liu that was made into a
Yep.
huge blockbuster.
Yes.
I guess the first sort of big Chinese blockbuster, right?
Yes.
Of that
Sci-fi
magnitude,
on sci-fi. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
I heard that I read two reviews. I haven't seen it, but I read two reviews that basically say, well, the this is very sort of pro uh, Chinese. Well, very sort of I guess reducing the message
Mm-hmm.
of a complex message. I haven't read the book either, I have to say. A complex message to a kind of a cheerleading for sort of Chinese power. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm not, I'm not saying at all that this doesn't happen in America, because it happens all the
Yeah.
time. And please, everybody who's watching this, please
Yes.
read Ender's Game, read
Yes.
Ender's Game, which is an anti-militaristic,
Yes.
cautious, a novel of
Uh-huh.
caution
Yeah.
that warns against increased militarism, and the movie that was made is basically a commercial for the army. So this
Yeah.
happens
Yeah.
all the time. But what is
Yeah.
your take? What's your take on
Uh-huh.
this movie, or
Yeah.
the molding of the story to fit
Uh-huh.
more like a party line, I guess, or if
Uh-huh.
that's the case?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So firstly, the movie is totally different from the original fiction. Actually, it's a novella. So you just take one small piece of the world setting and build up a totally different story. So we should take them separately. So, and secondly, like if you watch the movie itself, I can see there's a lot of efforts made to persuade people, to convince people this story could really happen because there's UN there, and there's a lot of different rescue forces from different countries at the end of the movie. So they work together to save the world. So actually, as you say, like Chinese, like the cheerleaders, and they gathering all these kind of different forces from different culture. So they try to save the world together. So I think pretty much yeah, is as you say,
So as opposed to a nationalist militaristic
yes,
message, it's a good old fashioned global militaristic message.
exactly, just like
Bring the globe
in
together.
those like Armageddon, like
Right,
in
exactly.
Deep Impact. So
Yes.
yes, yes, it's like those like movies, disaster movies back in the 90s. So it's pretty
Right.
much yeah,
Right.
yeah. But I strongly recommend you to watch it.
Absolutely.
It's on Netflix right now. Yeah,
I will absolutely watch it, and I
yeah.
again, if I come across as I'm sort of what I hate when people put a movie down or anything down or a piece of music without
Mm-hmm.
watching it or without actually building their own first-hand opinion, I I'm not that guy. I'm not
Uh
making
huh.
a judgment on the film. It was
Yep.
merely this interest. What does interest me is when. Oh, look at Stanley's totally zen. He sees that all this stuff is just holograms. These are not even real. This phone, right?
Yeah,
It's just a prop.
yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
They could be physical, but the so are you eyeing towards the as we're closing off the show? Are you eyeing towards movies? Is that a big important thing for you? Is that a validation of sorts? I personally always say, as a reader, I have a really hard time watching films because
Hmm.
when I love the book is in my
Yeah.
head, and
Yeah.
writers told me often that for them they understand that, but for them it seems to be easier. It's like they
Hmm.
have given birth to something, right?
Yes, I
You've given
think.
birth, and I mean, in case of Waste Tide, you wrote that this came out in China in 2013. I mean, you've been talking about this for a long time.
Yeah.
For you, it's like an adult son who, come on, move out of the house already. If you change your hair, I don't have a problem with it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
if they made a movie out of it, you wouldn't be mad if they were if people would look
Um.
different than in your head.
I mean, yeah. Right now, there's a British company is doing the adaptation. Right now, it's under developing. We right now have a film script. It was written by a award-winning scriptwriter in UK. So I think it's a good script, and but also it's a long way to go, like from a script to a real movie, right? But
Yeah.
I think as an author, you have to keep open-minded because it's totally different medium. You have to tolerance the necessary change, you have to cut off a lot of branches in your like plots. You might have to like combine some characters together to make it more functional efficiency, right?
Yep.
So I think it's totally understandable because I studied film art myself.
Yep.
Yeah, but I dare not to do it myself because I feel it's kind of difficult for me to cut it off like different parts. Like you are cutting your own children, right?
Child. Yes.
Yeah. It's like it's no way you can do that. So I think better to put it in the good hands with some experts. They can do it. So I'm pretty much looking forward to that, and I'm pretty open to whatever it show up on the big screen, and I'm more than happy to see how the mass audience responds to that.
But condensing something, as you said, with efficiency in screenwriting, that's one thing. But then leaving out the complexity of thought, and
Yeah.
like we established earlier, the way you present these different viewpoints and very
Mm-hmm.
clearly, it's not a negative, it's not
Yeah.
a
Yeah. For sure.
depressing a book. In many ways, it's uplifting, but you also do not push a Hollywood ending into it. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would be a little bit afraid or
Uh huh.
concerned that the
Yeah. Yeah.
complexity of the message gets greenwashed. Here's a good
Yeah.
metaphor, greenwashed, you see?
Yes, I know that. Yeah, greenwash.
Simplified, maybe.
Yeah, simplify. Yeah, but yeah, I know. But so maybe we can have a more com- complicated, sophisticated version on TV, maybe like
Right.
HBO or what Netflix did. So it's
Bingo.
like, yeah, it's the new
Yep.
novel in the 21st century.
That is
I think,
true. That I
yeah,
agree. Yep.
everyone go after that. So I watched so many Netflix good and HBO good TV series, but I couldn't remember a lot of good sci-fi movie in
Movies,
recent
exactly.
years. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
So you couldn't recall any. Yeah.
Well, the economic pressure on these huge movies is different with the way they're structured economically, the monetization. So there is a lot more artistic freedom and also freedom to be a little bit more nuanced and critical, if you will, in a sort of a spread out a TV narrative
Yep.
than a film, which has to wrap it up and is catering to a popcorn audience
Yep.
who may just want to not discuss the complexity of electronic waste recycling,
Yes.
while sipping a big gulp and typing into an iPhone 11 or
Uh huh.
something while they're watching it.
Yes. Yes.
All
Totally.
right. So, Sandy, that was awesome. We're out of time. Thank you so much for coming
Oops.
over. I
Thank you
know
so much.
well, you're
It
ruining my
was.
table. Please bring the cleaning personnel in here. I mean, all these books. Um, enjoy your stay in the UK, and big thank you to the folks at the landing. They
Yeah.
facilitated the VR. They're taking good care of you. I hope you have some good beverages there, and they're very nice to you over
Yeah.
there.
Lovely place.
Big thanks. Big thanks to Fabio Breen and Loki Elliott, who are the wardrobe people here for Stanley with the gloves and the jacket. I think the hair is a default hair, but the avatar is made by Matthew, by Full Spectrum. Matthew is a great 3D designer, and that's it. And I'm going to sign off with my catchphrase that I just came up with. Uh, for one Netflix subscription, you get 5 used books. Think about it per month, okay? Bye.
Bye. See you next
Bye.
time.
I want to see you soon. You got to keep writing when your
Yeah, for
next book
sure.
comes
For
out.
sure. Yeah, you'll be much crazier. Yeah, trust
Bye.
me. Bye bye.
Will it be crazy or will it be very Hollywood?
I think you will be crazier. I
Very
don't want to
good.
be
Good.
Hollywood. Yeah.
Very good, Stanley.
Huh.
Don't lose the edge. Don't lose the edge. Don't let them. But if they pay you, if they give, oh, we'll give you a big house in the Hollywood Hills, and we'll give you a big car.
Yeah, that'll be good as well. Okay, such
Okay,
a
bye.
pleasure talking to you.
My
Bye.
pleasure. Bye.